Although we still have to wait half a year for this movie, Avengers Doomsday is easily one of the most anticipated films of the year, only behind the upcoming Spider-Man film and Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. Avengers Endgame was the highest grossing movie of all time, it makes sense. And despite the decline of the MCU and superhero films this decade, this film is still bound to be a success. There have been many talking points: Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom, the returning X-Men, and what the film will even look like. But recently, one theory being brought up is who could actually die in this film. And not just some random heroes most don't care about, but characters we've known for years. And one is very obvious even now, despite us not even seeing a single full trailer yet. That is, of course, Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier himself. There are three huge reasons why Bucky will die in Avengers Doomsday, and today I'll be showing you why. From least to most important, here is why I believe Bucky Barnes will unfortunately meet his demise in the upcoming Avengers Doomsday. Let's start with the first reason, and one while not proven, feels like a big factor when it comes to this. Let's first talk about Sebastian Stan, the actor, and how his works outside the MCU have looked these past few years. Now, Stan has been in many projects before being in Marvel films, having very small roles in films like Black Swan and Hot Tub Time Machine. But his role as the titular anti-hero in Captain America the Winter Soldier really brought him into the mainstream as an actor to look out in the future. He was in much bigger projects after that, the most notable being I, Tonya, where I feel like he got to truly show his acting chops for the first time and delivering a terrific supporting performance. But the most obvious two examples being his two performances he gave in 2024. Those being his leading roles as a young Donald Trump in The Apprentice and as a struggling actor in A Different Man. These two films really showed how much of a talented actor he really is when it comes to drama and comedy, and cemented him as an exciting actor to look out for in future projects to me and many others. When it comes to The Apprentice, playing the current US president hated by many, ruining the lives of many more, and someone who violently attacks anyone who gives him even a slight bit of criticism, is a role that many would just straight up decline. And those who took it could have just been doing an exaggerated impression like Alec Baldwin. But Stan brought lots of humanity to Trump that makes him feel like a real person, as he slowly becomes a monster as the film progresses, and delivering a phenomenal performance alongside his co-star Jeremy Strong. And when it comes to A Different Man, he showed he could play a more comedic role really great as well. As two different characters, he delivers a memorable performance in this bizarre film, and is the heart and soul of this film as well, which makes it so much fun to watch in the end. It's not only these remarkable performances that help Sebastian Stan stand out, but the acclaim and recognition he got as well. Both films were acclaimed by both critics and general audiences despite not being box office successes, and Stan got plenty of awards recognition as well. For A Different Man, he won the Silver Bear for Best Leading Performance at the Berlin Film Festival, and the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy, and for The Apprentice received his very first Oscar nomination, alongside plenty of other nominations elsewhere. Along with his performance in the miniseries Pam and Tommy, Stan showed to be one of the best actors working in the 2020s, and I have a feeling he wants to challenge himself with more challenging roles outside the MCU and more drama films. This year he's set to star in the drama film Fjord with Renata Reinsve, which appears to be a major player for one of the best films of the year, and potentially a big awards player later on considering the people involved. And it seems Stan is pivoting more to these type of roles rather than playing Bucky for what seems like the next decade or so, considering he's in less and less Marvel projects as the years go by. Even though he's definitely getting paid less, these more interesting roles appear to be more satisfying to him. We have seen actors leave big franchises for smaller and more niche films, and many remain there for a while, except for a few. Robert Downey Jr. But sometimes, no matter the amount of money, you just won't take a role. And that's great. I want to see Sebastian Stan in more movies. I've grown to love him throughout these past few years and want to see him in more projects like The Apprentice and A Different Man. And if you haven't watched those films, then check them both out when you have the chance. But speaking of Marvel, that brings us to the second point. But before we do that, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more theory videos like this in the future. And drop a like as well, as this helps this video reach a much wider audience that could enjoy this video as well. With that out the way, let's get on to my second point. When it comes to Bucky Barnes and his role in the MCU post Endgame, similar to most characters new or returning, he basically serves zero purpose. Since all of the films in phases 4 and 5 were so disconnected from one another, not seeming to find any balance between old and new characters, and the disaster that was setting up Kang as the new replacement for Thanos, most films were basically meaningless in the grand scheme of things, and the ones meant to push the universe forward were complete failures. But how does Bucky fit into this? In his first two appearances in Captain America the First Avenger and Captain America the Winter Soldier, I wasn't a huge fan of Bucky. In the first Avenger, he was a relatively simple side character who wasn't the most memorable. And in the Winter Soldier, he was a cold-hearted killing machine with seemingly nothing human about him. But every subsequent appearance, he grew on me further and further. From his brief post-credit scene appearances, his role in Captain America Civil War, in both Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, I grew to care about him more and more. He became more human and likable, and after his brainwashing ended, could finally become the hero he was meant to be. Maybe it was also watching more films of Sebastian Stan, but Bucky Barnes grew to be one of my favorite MCU characters. So now we get to the three mainline MCU projects he's been in post Endgame: The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Captain America Brave New World, and Thunderbolts, and how useless he is in all three, giving me little hope for a future with him. Let's talk about the first, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, his most substantial role in the MCU and the most screen time he's ever given. First off, I want to say that I think this miniseries was extremely mediocre and one of the MCU's weakest projects. To be honest, I'm not a fan of any of the MCU shows whatsoever. I gave up watching them after Hawkeye. Aside from Loki, which is solid, the other three shows felt like wasted potential. They were padded out tremendously, the villains were some of Marvel's worst, and I barely connected with the leads of the shows despite how much more room they're given to breathe. And The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is the most egregious of these shows. The Flag Smashers are quite easily some of the worst villains in Marvel history. Not only extremely boring and forgettable characters, but with basic social commentary that adds nothing to the MCU. The pacing is bad, but one of the biggest problems for me is that the titular Winter Soldier has little to do. The show focuses so much on Sam Wilson taking up the mantle of being Captain America and the difficulties of that responsibility that Bucky does very little overall in the show. We spend little time on him overcoming his past trauma and adjusting to his new life in the 21st century. The show instead focuses more on setting up a future Captain America film instead. So let's talk about that, his brief role in Captain America Brave New World. Another MCU disappointment, even bigger than The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, not feeling like a Captain America film whatsoever and more of a sequel to 2008's The Incredible Hulk. Bucky is one of the few things connecting this as a Captain America film. He just gave Sam some advice and says he's running for Congress, which kind of makes no sense. This is really talked about whatsoever and would have been more interesting to see in the show that he actually starred in. But whatever, it's nice to see him show up, but pretty meaningless in the grand scheme of things. Now let's talk about his role in Thunderbolts, his latest appearance in the MCU. Bucky's role is weird in this one. He became a congressman, which could have been interesting to see, but he quit almost immediately to take down Fontaine and lead the Thunderbolts. That doesn't happen until the near end of the film though, so throughout most of the film he's either doing nothing or opposing this group of anti-heroes. The other members of the Thunderbolts have really good character arcs and chemistry and made me enjoy these characters more than in their previous installments, especially John Walker, a whole lot. But Bucky feels underutilized in this film and feels like he's just supposed to be in opposition to Sam Wilson in the future as the leader of a rival group of Avengers. These three projects ultimately gave Bucky very little to do with despite the massive potential they had, as he feels very underutilized despite the fact that he's supposed to be the lead in two separate projects. Stan is still great in the role. I primarily blame this more instead on the people in charge of the MCU and the writers as well, as practically all problems can be blamed on them. That brings us to Avengers Doomsday. Stan and the rest of the Thunderbolts team have been cast in the film, and many people have been speculating that they're going to be some of the casualties of the film considering how Taskmaster went out in Thunderbolts, and how weak they are other than devoid. So far, none of the Thunderbolts crew have been cast in Avengers Secret Wars. Although there are rumors that Florence Pugh's Yelena will play a big role, but it has not confirmed, so there is a good chance that some of the members, including Bucky, could die. Aside from leading this team, Bucky Barnes ultimately has very little going for him when it comes to the future of the MCU. Even without knowing the plot of either upcoming Avengers films, I don't see Bucky having much to do in the future of the MCU. With Chris Evans returning as Captain America, he could just replace Bucky, and there are definitely going to be some big deaths. Probably from some of the X-Men characters, and maybe a big character like Thor or Ant-Man, but someone is definitely going to die. Bucky Barnes seems like the most likely character, especially with the third and final reason that's probably the most important factor when it comes to this. Early this year, it was announced that Sebastian Stan was cast as Harvey Dent in the upcoming The Batman Part 2. This probably seals the deal when it comes to Stan leaving his role as Bucky Barnes. Now, it's not just because an actor can't appear in both Marvel and DC films. That's just blatantly untrue unless scheduling conflicts have something to do with this. But more on the fact that it's just time for Stan to move on. First off, he's been playing Bucky Barnes for 15 years up to this point. Yeah, that is an extremely long time to play any character. And considering how interconnected these Marvel roles are, it's better to leave once your contract is done so you can take on roles whenever you feel like, and not having a massive studio breathing down your neck. Then when it comes to the aspect of playing Harvey Dent, who obviously becomes Two-Face. Now, writer-director Matt Reeves really cares about the Batman comics and makes the film as accurate of an adaptation as he can. And that really worked with the Batman, as that is pretty easily the most accurate Batman adaptation out there in live action. When it comes to his approach to Harvey Dent and how he becomes the Two-Face, he's bound to take that approach as well. When talking about the last live action version of Two-Face, Aaron Eckhart's take from The Dark Knight, that was in my opinion the biggest problem of the film when it comes to accuracy. Out of any other Batman villain, Two-Face is by far the most complex. A honest district attorney brought into a life of crime after multiple tragedies. But Batman never gives up on his friend and tries to change him like he does with all of his villains. And oftentimes Two-Face gets help for his problems or even redeems himself and joins Batman's side when needed. Aaron Eckhart's Two-Face, and I guess Tommy Lee Jones's if we want to count him too, never really get this redemption arc, in the end just dying at the end of their films. I could make an entire video about the problems with Harvey Dent The Dark Knight, so if you want to see that, then comment below for that. But anyways, considering Matt Reeves still has two more Batman films left to do, there's a strong possibility that in part 2 we see Harvey Dent first as an ally, but becomes Two-Face at the end. And in part 3 we'll see him enter some sort of redemption arc and be redeemed by the end, either surviving or sacrificing himself, similar in Batman Hush. Now, we may have to wait until the 2040s to see these films wrap up, but there is a high possibility of that happening. Similar to Doomsday, we know next to nothing about the Batman Part 2 other than its cast and release date, so we also have to wait until that happens. The final point when it comes to this is filming times for the Batman Part 2 and Avengers Secret Wars. Both films are supposed to start shooting this summer, and considering Stan is already cast in The Batman Part 2, there is an extremely small chance that he actually appears in both. We don't know how substantial his role will be in the film, and we also don't know if he's going to be cast in Secret Wars at all. Considering The Batman Part 2 and Avengers Secret Wars are set to be released at this time in October and December of 2027 respectively, I don't see a world where Sebastian Stan will appear in both of these films. Although it took some time, I really grew to love Sebastian Stan and his role as Bucky Barnes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe despite his rocky start, and has grown to be easily one of my favorite characters in the whole MCU. But I feel like now is the time for Stan to hang up his coat as the Winter Soldier and move on to bigger and better things. Things that will be more fulfilling to him personally and for his career, as he probably doesn't want to be just known as Bucky Barnes for the rest of his life. These three reasons, whether all of them or maybe just even one of them, are the most likely reasons why Bucky Barnes will meet his end one way or another in Avengers Doomsday. And I have a strong feeling this will be the last time Stan plays this role, at least for the time being. We're still around half a year away from seeing if this comes to reality. I could be completely wrong or completely right, but we will all just have to wait and see for the outcome of this. Like always, guys, thank you for watching this theory. Once again, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button if you want to see more theory videos like this in the future. And comment below, what do you think will happen to Bucky Barnes in the future of the MCU and in Avengers Doomsday, if you feel like it. If you like this video, be sure to check out one of these videos as well, because you're bound to like them as well. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys this week, and I hope to see you all next time.